What's going on, everybody? So today I have level 82 and the global release of Diablo 4 for those who did not get early access is coming out soon. And just as a way to help you all, I want to go over my top 5 mistakes that I've made even after leveling up to 70 in the review beta and even before in both betas after experiencing a ton of this game. There's a few mistakes that I would highly recommend you avoid going through this process. Of course, if you just want to enjoy the storyline, that's awesome. Really solid story and definitely worth a leisure experience. But if you're looking to progress, this is definitely something that you're going to want to pay attention to. By the way, if you enjoy daily Diablo 4 content and you like this video, consider subscribing because 86% of you are not subscribed. And if you enjoy the content, you'll be able to see it every single day. Let's get into the video. So before I get into the mistakes, I want to do a brief summary of the things that I believe should be done, or rather that I did do correctly. The first thing is I absolutely blasted through the campaign and immediately tried to acquire my mounts. I think every single person should do this because it is going to make your life so much easier. I mean, if you just look at the walking speed versus the horse walking speed, it's already faster, but this isn't even including the running speed of the horse, which really speeds up as you approach outside of the world, which if we just look here, you can see it starts to speed up massively, and this is going to absolutely change your progression entirely. Another thing to note is to immediately try to get to world tier 3 and 4, and that is because it massively increases our experience and loot, and you'll notice that extremely quickly after you reach those world tiers. So try to level up and get XP as fast as possible. Those are some things that I would highly recommend, and I've been doing correctly, or what I should say is I don't regret it at all. Now for the first mistake, I absolutely have to mention side quests and overall not efficiently doing them. Now I've gotten question after question, when should I do side quests, where should I do them? And to be honest, I was getting a little, I guess you'd say, annoyed with doing the Fracture Peaks Renown because I had done it like 17 times. So I didn't even bother with this area. And you might notice that I don't even have the Renown maxed out on any of the areas. And that is because it takes so long to actually do this. But one of the ways you can make it faster is to go around picking up side quests in the areas, particularly the towns, because oftentimes they have 3 to 4 side quests per town. So like this town down here. We have Nostrava over here, this town down here, I forgot what it's called, Yelesna. All these towns, Kyovashad obviously, pick them up so that you could go ahead and match the side quests to dungeons that you have not done and get the renown first time completion for the dungeon, and then also get the renown for the side quest. You can see this is a perfect example. Guess what? Light's Watch, I had already done that dungeon, but I didn't even have the side quest with it, which means that I did not get the kind of bonus renown that I would have if I just did it while I'm going through. And you can actually combo this with Nightmare Sigils, which you'll acquire after World Tier 3. The second thing that I regret, and is something that I'm going to be starting to do, is actually not going to Helltide zones to farm up the rare materials you needed to upgrade from rank 4 to rank 5. Now you'll notice all my gear is rank 4 right now, and that is because I have not gone to Helltide zones and farmed up the rare materials that are required from those zones. And this also doubles for your potion upgrade, which I'll showcase in just a second. But you can see here, if I wanted to upgrade this, the materials here on the left-hand side require something Forgotten Souls, which are only found during the Helltide, which is super important to kind of acquire and actually get some massive upgrades. You can see here, I get 1.7% crit damage, a bunch of extra stats. And if I did this for every single piece, right? I mean, look at this one. This one's a ton of extra vulnerable damage. We have lots of extra armor, right? Get armor across the board. Overall, it's just gonna be a massive upgrade. And this really means that you should be doing Helltide zones as you approach later on in the game, and you really are entering World Tier 4. And the same thing applies to the level 80 potion upgrade, because guess what? I need Fiend Roses. And those Fiend Roses can oftentimes, if I just pop the resources open, where are they? Actually, I can just pop them open here. And this is something that you're going to find during the Helltide. So both the herb and the upgrades require the Helltide zone. So you're going to do kind of the double up on that, and you're going to be totally fine. The third mistake that I really regret is actually not paying attention to potions. Now, you might say, oh, I've heard this all the time. Use a potion, get the 5% XP boost. That is obviously something that you want to do, but I actually mean the potion effects itself, because oftentimes I will run the same dungeon over and over and over again for XP farming. For those of you who have not seen some of the previous videos on the channel, there are definitely a couple dungeons that have the same monster type. And guess what? If you go to the crafter here, or the apothecary, or alchemist here, rather, there are actually tiers of elixirs. Down at the bottom, you'll have weak ones, but as you go towards the top, you can get the potent elixirs. And some of them, you know, are attack speed. Some of them are overpower damage, precision damage. This is huge, by the way. 5% crit strike chance and 30% crit strike damage. Woo! Huge. Fire resist, cold resist. This ones are actually way good as well. And you might say again, oh, well, it's just resistance. Does that really matter? If you're farming the same dungeon over and over and over again, absolutely. This can absolutely change your survivability to a massive degree. And of course, while you're doing the dungeons themselves, you might be able to pick up some elixirs like this beast slaying one, which will massively help you against any spider dungeons or werewolf dungeons, that type of thing. This one's Goatmen. This one's going to be really, really big against Goatmen, and there is a dungeon Champion's Demise, which is a really nice farming spot that is basically entirely Goatmen. So a lot of these potion effects give you really, really big stat boosts. Again, we're looking at potentially 20% damage increase. That is not to ignore, or 32% poison resist, or whatever resist you need for a specific dungeon. Find a dungeon, usually there's a couple around the map that are really, really good farming spots already. Go ahead and jump into there, and assuming, let's say they reset the dungeons, or they remove the fact that you can reset the dungeons, even if that's the case, you could still use these in general in terms of like the precision elixir or the assault elixir, etc. Now, the fourth mistake is actually not managing my legendary items properly, and kind of at some points being too stingy, and at other points being, I guess you'd say, not wanting to deal with it, so I just salvaged it. But what I would recommend is anytime you have a really high roll, for example here on this one right here, this one has, let me just show you here, 28% attack speed on my basic skills. Yeah, I might not use that right now, and in fact, it's a level 36 item, so the stats on it are definitely not something that I'm particularly interested in, but that's a relatively high roll, so you want to keep all high rolls regardless of you using it for your build, because you might not be able to acquire them later. And in fact, I ended up using a lot of my high rolls later, for example, my amulet tier, because I wanted to push to the next tiers, and I didn't do it fast enough. So using these later on, and by the way, for anyone that's curious, you can use normal aspects on ancestral gear. That is something that is just inside the game, so that is going to be super useful for you all. But also at the same note, saving the max rolls, but also using them and not saving them forever. For example, if you're trying to push to world tier 4, this is a great time to actually consume some of your more important aspects. And in fact, this one, the aspect of disobedience, gives me, this is a max roll here, 75% potential increased armor. That is a huge amount of armor, and this is what absolutely changed the game for me into world tier 4. I was actually farming world tier 4, and I ended up dying. I'm on softcore, so I didn't really try to go ahead and survive necessarily. Obviously, I don't want to die a ton because it's going to lower my XP rates, but this changed it and allowed me to get consistently high value XP without dying. And that's because I had that max roll. I tried it with a lower codex of power, but it would have been half as effective. And obviously, you don't want that. You want to have that max roll, but don't hold on to them too long. Obviously, you can wait to the absolute end of the game, but even then, you can just farm it again potentially in the end of the game when you're trying to min-max your build. This is definitely going to help your leveling process if you start to use higher level aspects. And lastly, you might notice that I have an absolute absurd amount of gold. I also have an absolutely absurd amount of crafting materials here, except for, some of the potion materials that I need from the Helltide zones. But for example, scattered prisms, I have 59 of. I have a ton of leather, a ton of salvage materials. I can upgrade a whole new set of gear, potentially like 2-3 times over, and not have any issues whatsoever. And that means that you should absolutely be upgrading gear more often than people suggest. Now, the reason I say this, even though upgrading gear seems like a very obvious, thing to say, a lot of people are concerned about how the materials shape up as you approach later and later on in the game. The only bottleneck that you typically have in this game when it comes to gold and resources is actually in the early to mid game. And the reason why you're having that, if you are, is because you are, trying to swap out aspects and upgrade your gear. But guess what? As you get deeper in the game, that problem's not going to get worse. It's actually going to get way better, assuming you're actually putting together your build, and you're not going to have to change your build again, which, you know, that might end up having you be in a little bit of a struggle spot. But you do definitely want to upgrade your gear starting in World Tier 3. And I waited on this for quite some time. And one thing that I did not do is actually upgrade my jewelry. So make sure you do upgrade your jewelry. Do not forget about this, because I actually did this on accident. And along this note, put sockets in your gear. You can see here, I actually did not do this for my chest piece and some other pieces here, which I'm going to do right now, actually, because I forgot that these can basically have multiple sockets. So you can see here, I could have 2 sockets there, 2 sockets there, and 2 sockets there. And then I can go ahead and move some gems into those slots and give myself just a little bit more life and a little bit more crit strike damage. So these are going to be huge. They apply to even if you have an offhand weapon that you're not using, or I should say like a secondary loadout weapon that you're not using. It's all going to apply additional stats to your character, and this is going to be super, super big for pushing again to World Tier 3 and World Tier 4. And honestly, that's going to be the key moments when you actually start to ramp up your experience and your progression really starts to skyrocket. So that's going to be it, guys. Hopefully this helped a little bit. I know some people were a little bit concerned about a few things and had some questions, so I just want to give you all some advice. And for those of you that are trying out the game and just lastly for the first time, hopefully you enjoy the game. It was really, really fun, and thanks for watching. I'll see you for the next one.